All right, thank you for your time this morning here. This is again Christian Roach of Open Door Technology. And today's webinar series that we'll be covering is What's New in Business Central 2020 Wave 1 Spring Release. The content will be a lot like what we do on our open house at the end of the year, although now we're just going to be doing this one mid-year, of course, with Microsoft doing major updates twice a year for the online cloud version. So without further ado, we'll get rolling. So just here's a slide of me at work there with the cat, and so just with all of us working at home, I thought it would just be kind of fun to just bring up a few tips for working from home. Try to avoid working in bed, avoid working where you'll be tempted or distracted, set boundaries with other people, take breaks, and social distance, not social isolation. So I myself am enjoying working from home a bit, where I get to stop and have lunch with my family, so it's a nice treat. So today's agenda, we'll be talking about just a reminder of our support shop and learning links, update on ODT, Business Central, what's new, and then just a recap on our Open Door add-ons and a few other things just for those who may or may not be already using those apps, and just kind of bringing you up to speed on where we're at with that. So what I'd like to do is suggest that you have your phone ready. So for example, I have an iPhone, and if you take and use your camera, you'll be able to just hover your camera over top of a QR code that'll be displayed. And that way, if you would like, you can launch that, and it'll take you to the URL. And so if you're interested, you just kind of flash those, open them up on your phone, and review them later if you'd like to. So once again, just have your phone ready and try out your camera on a couple of the slides. So just to recap on our support portal, that URL, https://support.opendoorerp.com. That'll be the QR code in the upper right if you'd like to try out your phone. And then now you'll be able to do that when you see those. So that just takes you to the support page. Of course, we can also take email support. So if you were to email support@opendoorerp.com, that'll also open up a ticket for you. From the support portal, you can log in using the customer login page at the top, and then use your email and password that you have to access. And then from there, you can manage your ticket to create, communicate back and forth, and close a ticket or change that status. Solution articles available, so knowledge base, manuals, videos, and we also have forums. Forums are a great place to find release notes for ODT rentals and service, for example. So we encourage you to check that out. You can also, I think it's watch. I suddenly can't remember the name of the button, but if you, on a forum, you can kind of subscribe to it so that then when there is a new release note released for a rental version, for example, you get an email notification with a link to take you to read that new article. So we encourage you to check out some of the forums and get on that list. You can manage your Microsoft licenses with us. So we are a CSP or a cloud solution partner with Microsoft, and therefore we provide licenses for Office and other apps, including Business Central, of course. But with our shop.opendoorerp.com site, you can visit there, and as a customer of ours, you can increase or decrease those licenses as you need. It's a great way to be able to scale rather than being locked into annual contracts directly with Microsoft, for example. And again, just our offer is that we provide annual discounted price at a monthly rate, letting you then scale up or down. So what's new to the shop? We are now transacting in Euro as well for our European partners and customers. And we also have an enhanced storefront that's been released in the last while with a modern interface. It is also mobile friendly, and there's performance improvements. So we encourage you to check that out too. So as an organization who is a global partner, there was minimal change for us to keep delivering our services, actually. And just because the majority of our folks who work with us are remote. So we went from about 90% remote to 95%. So there's about 2 of us who've not gone to the office regularly anymore. So, and then just as a sharing is that we have a net zero change in our teams and that we have a maternity leave. So we're excited to also be celebrating growing families of open door folks. And bottom line, we are ready when you are too. So if you need to put those projects on hold or if you're looking to ramp them back up, we are here and available. So just a reminder that if I keep saying NAV or Navision, it's Business Central, and I have to constantly remind myself. And just, of course, all the logo changes have been changing, but we've finally believe we've landed at that turquoise color, so that's the symbol that you'll recognize, but the other ones are the older ones if you're looking for them in the past. So, just some exciting changes with version 16. Again, there's significant performance improvements. So pages are opening 180% faster, quicker to see layouts. So it's 400 or 4 times improvement. And then it's also faster to enter a sales order as an example. And they've made some changes with shortcut keys and keystrokes that I think really benefit the folks that are entering in that data. So just a reminder that we really encourage everyone to use the Business Central Ideas feedback. And again, that QR code's in the upper right if you'd like to check out that page. But this is what Microsoft uses to determine what features to deliver in future updates, whether those are major or minor. Minors are typically dedicated to fixing or hot fixes or minor changes. But again, the major, we want to get our input and feedback here for Microsoft so that they've done 78 ideas that have been delivered in the last 2 waves. 6 of the top 10, so the most voted features, have been put into the solution. And then in all, 2,493 votes were represented. So we really encourage our customers, prospects, anybody who is using Business Central to use that aka.ms/BC ideas. Get your ID on there, find the one if it already exists, and give it a vote. For our larger customers, so we have some customers who have multiple companies or heavy in transactions or store data inside. And there was a limit to Microsoft Business Central online, and it was 80 gigs. If you're concerned about reaching that, that's now been extended. There is a way to add additional size now to a Business Central database, which eliminates that concern, but there is a cost, of course. So what we're doing is just really encouraging folks to look at removing any test companies that are in that database that perhaps you don't need, or going through and maybe considering using the archive tool on older data to compress, or some things like that. But again, in version 16, they have added some new SQL compression and other features to the database that is reducing the sizes of some of our customers' databases. So we're excited to see Microsoft addressing that concern. But again, if you are questioning the size of your database or have concerns about reaching this 80 gigabytes, feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss those together. Now let's take a look at what's new. So we've kind of been breaking these things down in our presentations, and what we'll go through is kind of the application platform and then administration, or some of the technical aspects of interest for the group. So let's go through general enhancements. So just the general enhancement that I wanted to highlight is the fact that they've expanded the regions. So it's now available in 6 new countries, but the additional base language support has changed a bit. So what you'll notice is, for example, in the slide shot, kind of in the middle, is that I have the French language Canada that I have added to my Business Central for my French speaking folk. So what it is that on App Source, they've actually now added language packs, and you'll see a screenshot of that on the left with the colored tiles. And so you can reach out and add Spanish language for Mexico or Czech language to your Business Central, for example. And some of the languages are done by Microsoft and others are done by partners out there who are transforming it, for example, in Vietnamese. But once you've loaded or added that extended pack, then you can use the My Settings to change to that language. And if you have the language extension pack, your Business Central language will be translated for you. So that's just something to kind of note. So application enhancements for finance. There's a new toggle, skip zero balance lines, that's added to the bottom of our account schedule report options. And again, to find that, you may need to use the show more details. So just remember to click show more to see additional filter information. But at the bottom then, when you're printing an account schedule then, and that is to skip, then if your line for an expense account was a zero balance, it then would not show on the related account schedule report you are running. Journal line count has been added to the bottom of a general journal page. So I just have a red arrow kind of pointed out at the left there, but it just gives us an indication as to the number of lines in the journal batch that is there, so that if you were to import, copy, paste and had 10 lines, you can verify that you had an expected 10 or 20. So 10 would be if you're using balancing account, for example, and you would want 20 if you were not using the balance account number. There are improvements within the bank reconciliation page. Now, just kind of to make a little bit of a highlight here, but within your general ledger setup, there's actually a feature to turn on or off a North American bank rec. And so the traditional, so in the older versions, we had a section for checks, deposits, and adjustments as separate fast tabs with rows of detail. That is the North American bank rec module, and you can toggle that on or off. And so what I'm showing is the new bank rec process, where you can see side by side bank statement lines or bank lines that you would download or import from a text file from your bank in comparison to the bank ledger entries, and then you can do some matching and whatnot. So what it does is then ticks on what it can kind of clear and then leaves off what needs to be addressed either through an adjustment or the whatnot. But so I'm talking about primarily the page improvements on the new bank rec with the side-by-side view. And so what they've done is to enhance this page and have more space for data and allow better overview and understanding of the bank statement lines and the related bank account ledger entries. A bank reconciliation report that can be used to report on both ongoing and posted bank reconciliation statements is provided. So what they've done though is reduced some of the space in the right or left to maximize the ability to see these two side-by-side panes and give you more information rather than obviously having to scroll bar back and forth as much. So we're excited about those changes too. So sales. This is kind of one of those ones that I think there's a few people out there that have actually requested this as a manual change. Well, this is now there by default finally. So what Microsoft has done, and I have the wrong title on the slide, my apologies. So what it is that they've added the your reference and external document number to be consistently available on sales documents. You'll notice that in prior versions on, say, a posted invoice or credit memo, the your reference or the external document number wasn't there or available. It is now, and then it's in the data set, so we can actually use custom layouts, for example, to update our own layouts of invoices to include those fields. Within purchasing, one of the exciting changes is the ability to purchase a resource. So finally, what we can do is if we had a resource for, let's say, a day rate, well, now we could actually purchase that from a vendor. We could put down a quantity of 4 day rates and then actually receive and invoice against that resource to record the service or the line type being purchased, received, and then invoiced now. So we're excited to have that. Another feature with regards to purchasing is the ability to over-receive. So in those situations, sometimes where you may have ordered a quantity of 2 from somebody and you actually receive 3, well, it's more cost and effort for yourself and for your supplier to go about returning that one. And you might just say, hey, let me keep it, give me a discount, and let's go. Well, now you can do that over-receiving on the PO. It's possible to put or create over-receipt codes where you can set tolerance percentages as to what a user is allowed to over-receive. So you can still put in some of that workflow approval, and then indeed, as I just mentioned, workflow, then you can actually have that route for approval, etc., if it's being over-received. Additional purchasing changes include receipt dates added to purchase order data report data sets, default purchasing methods to an item card. So now on an item card, you can say this is a special order or this is a direct order from a supplier. You can also then, or there's new post and new shortcuts added to document, purchase documents as well. Inventory enhancements. So there is a advanced planning parameter that has now been moved down into the Essentials license. So some of the advanced planning features that were available were only there with a premium license and hitched into manufacturing. Well, that's now been moved down into our Essentials licenses, so we can still do some of the suggested planning worksheets and things like that, and then pick up and include demand and other features that were only available within the premium license in the past. Item availability by unit of measure. So now on a line, if I'm selling something and I have 2 lines of unit or 2 units of measure, and I want to check to see how many boxes versus how many individual pieces I have, well, I can do that if I'm tracking my inventory in those 2 unit of measures. And one of the most exciting features and oftentimes requested is the ability to undo a receipt or shipment of non-item lines, and I'm excited to say that that's there now too. And on that screen, for example, I just tested one with actually a resource. So I did a purchase of a resource, and then I went in and received it, and then I undid the receipt, reopening the line for my ability to make that change again. So that now works for GL accounts and resources. Register capacity in units of seconds. So for those in manufacturing who have work centers, it's now possible to configure your capacity or register the capacity as a fraction of a minute. General application-wide enhancements include things like auto insert of recurring sales and purchase lines. So if you're not aware of this feature, it's pretty handy when you have a recurring invoice or an invoice that, let's say, a telco purchasing bill, because you can do it on sales and purchase. But you could say, well, I've mapped everybody's phone numbers out. I've spent the line to kind of break down my phone bill. It's the same structure or has minor changes, but with amount changes. Well, what you could do is save that as a recurring sales or purchase line in that example and pull it in. Well, now it's possible to automatically insert. So every time that I chose TELUS and I had this subscription, that it would actually pull in that detail on the purchase invoice line for me to start. Of course, you can modify it or remove the lines and continue, but it's a new feature that they've added, is the ability to auto insert. Print to attachment. So the ability to print to attachment is that sometimes you just want a copy of that related document in a PDF form that you could refer or perhaps download and send off. Well, now what you can do is, using the attach as a PDF, is it'll print the related report and automatically attach it to the record in Business Central using the attachments. So then it's just a nice way to actually have a quick link back to that source document. Enhanced document layouts. So if you had been working with, let's say, EFT, you would be AP EFT, you would be familiar with document layouts. You may not have explored it in other situations. Document layouts on a vendor or customer is a way to be able to pick a usage or a report type and number, and then define what report or what custom layout to print. This way, it's actually possible to send an invoice, for example, to a customer in one format than another customer. So that was there in prior versions, but what they've done is they've expanded the usage. So they now include things like quote, confirmation order, reminders, statements, and then the ability to map a send to email address, and then also define an email body description and whatnot. So you can then have a quote being sent to one person and then the invoices being sent to another. So there's some exciting changes there for you to look at. Reverting quantity when you cancel an order. So oftentimes, or cancel an invoice, but what will oftentimes happen is that if I was to do a sales order, for example, I then invoice it, and then I say, oh, actually I want to cancel that invoice to redo something. When you cancel, you'll get the option to reset that quantity to invoice back open on the sales order. So then it's kind of going back to update, and it just helps you track what invoice amounts are still outstanding on a sales order or purchase order, for example. There's productivity improvements in permissions. Permissions are one of the most complex parts of Business Central, and I would be the first one to stick up my hand on that. But what they've provided now is the ability to have a little tool to remove obsolete permissions. So at times during version upgrades and whatnot, there can be lines that are left in your permission sets, your custom permission sets, that an object or a table may have been removed because it's old functionality. Well, there's a little tool now to go through and clean that up. You can select multiple permission sets when adding to people, and then the ability to export and import system permissions on premise only, but you can actually import and export and merge permissions for your own changes. So if I created a my role, I could add the permissions and then export those permissions. So what's handy about it is that you may want to make an export of one that you're going to make some changes to, and then be able to import it back if you wanted to roll back your changes, or delete and import it fresh, that kind of thing. Or if you've done it in one, such as Sandbox, to test it all, then you could export that permission set, go to your production and import it. So lots of possibilities there now. And then there's some prompt and guidance when importing to be able to merge those different changes into each other. So I encourage you to check that out as well. And then select display several permission sets with a filter permission sets action. There is within the new workflow request notifications, an ability to advise or notify the requester or sender. And one of the big advantages to here has been, one of the primary questions we've had is, well, how do we let the approver know if there's a rejection? And it's always been, well, you have to kind of go to the tile and look at your flow, and then you'll see your rejections. Well, now you can notify sender on all those various actions. So again, this really enhances the workflow and information back to people submitting for approval. General client improvements. It's the ability to collapse and expand document lines. So they've also added some shortcut keys to make this more keyboard driven, which is nice. So you can use F6 or Shift F6 and Alt F6. And F6 and Shift F6 move you up or down by fast tabs. And then the Alt F6 lets you show, hide, or collapse. And one of those items that you can now do is the Lines fast tab. The Lines fast tab that can be collapsed or expanded. The export and edit in Excel, okay, is now rolled out as its own permission set. What this means for us is prior to this version, it was understood or expected that any customer with Business Central access could go to a list where the export to Excel or edit in Excel feature was there, and they could simply interact and use it. Well, now that is a permission set you can add or remove from users or user groups. So if you don't want people to be able to export your fixed asset list to Excel, but that they should be able to still view the list and work with that, well, you can now do that. And it's just that it's a new D365 Excel export action permission. And then in that screenshot, you'll notice that the permission set name, or the permission set code does not start with D365. It's in a different range. So if you go look for it, you need to look for the word Excel, but the name of it is what we were just saying, D365 Excel export action. You can see that on the screenshot. Enable non-interactive printing in the cloud. So this is an interesting way now with the cloud online version, where on-prem, what we could do in the on-prem situation is if I had a process where I wanted my packing list report to be printed to my warehouse printer, and I wanted the invoice to happen at the front counter printer, and not have to ask the person processing the transaction or the report to pick manually which printer to go, this is the answer. So there's now a printer management available where you'll notice I've just added my home printer, and what the requirement is such as I use a HP OfficeJet Pro at home. I then have ePrint, which comes with that printer, HP ePrint, and it's a web service. So what it is that I can send my print job to an email address, and then out it pops on my printer. Well, now that lets us send that packing slip to web service by email address, warehouse printer, and my invoice report to my front counter printer. And so now then when you print, it'll automatically fire the pick list to the back printer and my invoice to the front printer. And so that's what this all means, is non-interactive printing in the cloud. So it just uses a email enabled printer like HP's, for example, to send to an email address and have it pop out. And you set that up in printer management, and then you assign through printer selections. There's enhanced mobile accessibility related to a device orientation. So just in the screenshots there, I've put a red kind of indicator around that little chevron, and you'll notice it's down and then up. And what it's the ability to do is on my phone, I'm looking at the customer, but I can still interact through a tap with their fact boxes and queue information. So that's what I'm doing there by hitting the chevron at the top on the phone app. And so we encourage you to try out the phone app and see how it feels. And then you'll notice that in the third screenshot in the lower right, that's where I've actually orientated my phone to be landscape, and you'll notice that it's dynamic now and changes to show some of the fact box information, like the picture to the left and then the content to the right now. And then of course on a tablet, that becomes much bigger. But what it's also done on the Role Center is that you have two independent abilities to scroll. So I can scroll the left menu up and down with a thumb, and then I can use the right thumb to use the Role Center information area. So you might want to take out your old iPad there and try playing out with the Business Central app on your iPad and see how it feels now. They've added navigation trees and some features for developers. And in the screenshot on the left, you'll notice it's a GL account or a chart of accounts overview. And that's where, as I've grouped my chart of accounts, you'll notice a little down arrow and then right arrows. And I can interact with that by clicking, or now a keyboard too. And you'll notice a double chevron at the very top just to kind of fully expand or fully collapse. So they've made it more of an indication and action button, and really improves the use of the keyboard again, but also being able to quickly navigate through collapsible trees. Resiliency of UI customizations. Now, I wasn't really sure where to put this, if it was more of a technical development and admin one or into the general, but regardless, what it is that as you make changes or personalization or customization of various pages, what these do is it becomes it's now available in a view, so you can actually get to personalized or customized pages, and you can see those individual pages. And this is handy if you're troubleshooting some kind of odd error or behavior you're getting with the page. So there's now a troubleshoot function that you can run to see if there is a confliction or something, and then you could simply remove or delete this customization to reset the page yourself. This used to be a bit of a pain to try to hunt down and find. Well, they've now added these tools for us to be able to do that together. And this is available for super users in your database. Sharing of links. So what they've done now is added a deep link concept. And so in the screenshot, what you'll notice is that I've created my own view called on hand. I set my quantity to be greater than 0, so I filtered the list. But what you'll notice is that they've embedded now that kind of information right in the URL. There's that yellow on hand. And by doing that, what I can do is, whether it's a filtered list, a specific record I'm on, I can share that with colleagues. So I could do the share from the browser, copy, paste that link into a document or email, whatever I'm going to do, and share that. And then when the user selects it, they will also see that same view pop up, filtered the way I had it. So it's a great way to share your information, lists or records that you want to work with somebody on. They added a show and go to related records from a list. So this was a bit more fluid in the on-premise version, so they've enhanced the web client now to include that ability as well. So what I can do from a list or a document in view mode is that I can actually click the buy from vendor number in this example, and then use the open to open that related card. So I can jump to the vendor card if I want to review or make a change to the vendor, rather than having to do the search for vendor and continue on. So they've kind of provided more of a direct method to work with the related customers, vendors, items, things like that from these related lists. There's now an ability to cancel long-running queries. We were oftentimes stuck when we were doing big reports or running something or doing a query, and the web client would appear to freeze. Well, now it actually gives you a bit more of a dialogue, talks about what it's doing or the rows that it's working on, but also has a cancellation button. And so that then allows you to kind of say, oh, okay, well, if it's going to take a couple seconds, I just want to cancel that and I'll do something else and then do that a little later. Well, you can do that now by hitting the cancel button. And this option is coming out in kind of the 16.2, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But so if you were to try this in your Business Central Online today, it's not going to be there. It's a new feature that they'll be exposing. But just in the dark blue, you can't really see, but it says show header equals 0 in the little URL. So this might be more of a the developer scenario. But if you were to add that show header equals 0 at the top as part of your URL, you'll notice in my example, it's dropped the black title bar at the top. I don't have a way to go to my settings, for example, or the admin center. But what it does is adds some real estate. So this might be a URL that you would want, for example, when doing bank recs, because oftentimes bank recs, it's real estate intensive. You want as much space on your screen as you can for doing your day-to-day entry or your bank rec process. So that's just one of those things. If you want to eke out a little bit more space, you could do the show header equals 0. Now, just to touch on that there's 3 layers to customizing the UI. Now, this is a review, okay? Because this functionality existed in version 15 prior to version 16. But there is personalization. It's intended for micro adjustments on a per person basis. So I might like a particular field in a certain order on a list, but the other person beside me doesn't. That's a personalization, something just for me. Then there's role customization. That has been expanded and added back to the web client in version 15. So again, that existed before 16, but it's a way to make a group of changes on a behalf of a user group. So for example, my sales data entry folk, I may add the extended document number and move it into a certain position and hide another field that they don't need to know about. I'm doing that on behalf of a group of the users. Then there's the in-app designer, and it actually auto builds extensions. And there's a few folk out there who have done this themselves, but it's the way to go and add fields to a page that maybe didn't exist. Something to remember though is that it affects all users. That is a database-wide change. It doesn't just happen for a certain group or whatnot. So that's just something to call attention to, is that the app designer, and it'll auto build the AL code necessary, and then you can deploy that change on behalf of all users. One of the changes though that is there within the profiles that's exciting is the ability to export and import profiles. So in this little example, what I've just shown is that I might have my profile that I've added, my own company's profile as a copy of, say, Business Manager. I might go and customize the pages to hide a bunch of stuff that the organization or the group that I'm assigning to this my profile don't need. But now I can actually export the profiles and or import profiles. The advantage here is that then I could be doing all this in a sandbox environment, not playing with my live system. Then I export that profile and import it into my production when I'm ready. Or vice versa, if I want to test something in Sandbox, well, now I could export from my live and import it in my Sandbox. So that's an exciting change. Additional client improvements include an ability to enter data more easily. So similar to Excel, they've introduced the F2 key, and what it does is toggles to highlight the entire line or put the cursor at the end of the field. So it's just a nice way to quickly F2 to overwrite a description rather than watching people hit the backspace or try to manually highlight the contents of a cell. F2. When typing to fill in a row of data, the tab key works more like an Excel sheet, because before what would happen is that if you hit tab, it would go to a little ellipses button at the end of a field and then on to the next field. And so now it really feels more like Excel. I'm going cell by cell and then shift tab back and things like that. In editable lists, users can use the left or right arrow keys to navigate to the previous or next cell in a row. And so that'll feel a lot more fluid again within general journal lines or purchase and sale lines. So we encourage, I think that people will feel more natural on a keyboard with the journals and line pages. They've optimized the use, optimized the use of space on a page. That really is kind of becoming evident within the bank rec and documents and things like that. But as a general rule, they've gotten 15% more horizontal space and 5% more vertical space for content, and it results in gains of 1 or 2 more columns or rows. So we're excited to see what they're doing there. Something that I would just mention on that as well is that you can zoom your browser or zoom out your browser, and you'll get more data. So it might be advantageous for some of those folks that are doing a lot of data entry to just simply start to zoom out until it's manageable. But then you'll have a lot more content or information on your screen to work with. So that's just a tip. Fast tabs with no specified caption are treated as groups that define the structure of a page. And as a result, captionless fast tabs have reduced white space and no longer can be collapsed by users. So what it does is just makes use of some of the additional space that Microsoft doesn't need to show. So pages are opening faster. So I had talked about the fact that they've got some improvements of 180% on pages. So what they've done there is in version 16, they're caching the duration of the session for the user. And then in the up and coming 16.2 improves that feature by caching pages across sessions. So it's going to improve users as they open a customer and close a customer and go on to a next. Another user goes and touches it, it's going to load quicker for them as well. So we're excited to see just kind of the related performance improvements and the telemetry that they're using to measure and monitor the effect and output. Just a few other points: unhiding of a page, and they can use the find function on the Role Explorer to be able to search things, and then long-running operations, of course, I've already talked about, can be canceled. But the unhide parts, you can visually see them now, and they're not just kind of lost. You have to go and re-add them manually. It makes it a bit easier to go and reactivate things should they have been removed and you want to. All right, so at this point, let's actually just kind of pop in and have a peek at what some of that is. So I will just go to my browser. And so something that you're going to notice here is that I'm actually using Microsoft Edge. So what have we been telling everybody for yonks to use Chrome? Well, the latest version and the released version of Edge is now the recommended browser by Microsoft. They've added I think it's called a Chromium kernel, which then utilizes some of the Chrome functionality. And they are now using this as their primary browser for all testing first now. And the performance is really good. So you should find that more things are running better in Edge even than in Chrome going forward. So we encourage you to check that out. One of the other kind of cool features here is just the collections. So what I've done is I've started a collection. Well, you could create pages, right, for your favorite links. So for example, I have Admin Center, Home Page, and Business Manager Center. Now again, using the deep link concept, if you had a favorite list, well, you could add it to this to quickly relaunch. So it's like having a favorites bar, right? But of course, what I can do under the collections is add notes to give indication, but also simply launch all selected, for example. Okay, so I'd like to encourage you to check out the collections there and see how it works for you. Alrighty, so what I wanted to do there is just now show you the kind of a few of the minor changes there within the, just a few of the modern client improvements that we had talked about. So one of those things is the Role Explorer. So this was introduced, I believe, in version 15, but within the Role Explorer, now I can find or search for sales, for example, and it'll highlight all the different menu choices that I have within my Role Center profile, Business Manager. But, and again, if I have access, I can explore all areas that I have permission to. You'll notice the little indicator to show that there is a sale related item in there too. So that's kind of the find within the Role Center for you. Just deep links, let's maybe talk about that for a moment. So if I go to items and I have my on-hand view. So what I've done is I've saved my own view by doing a filter and then used the save as and then created an on-hand one. But now if I was to simply copy and share that link now, it'll take me right to that filtered list. So I could put that in a Word document, for example, as a link to, you know, a daily routine, or a notepad as a daily month-end task to check what inventory, export, and email. Well, now you could kind of use that link, and then the person clicking it'll go right to what they need to do rather than to replicate the steps or do their own save as. Let's look next at the document. And so if I go to my purchasing and I'm going to go to a purchase order, I'm just going to open, actually first I'll click kind of in here. You'll notice I'm using my arrow keys right and left, so I'm able to kind of go cell by cell. I can then arrow down and I'll pick the first one here. And I press enter. So now if I go F6, you'll notice I'm jumping to the fast tab sections. Shift F6 to go back, okay? And then I can use my tab key or shift tab key to go field by field within there and jump to my next section. Alt F6 will let me collapse or an expand. So now I can quickly go through by keyboard and interact with my data. If I then use the tab, you'll notice the tab there, and the tab is bypassing that little ellipses. And then if I push F2, I can get into a particular field to start editing. Or if I want to just change that description, I could Control Z. I'm just going to F2 to highlight, copy, so I don't have it. But now I can retype it. Or of course, now simply paste it back because I've got it in my little clipboard. So a lot of just general user improvements in the way to interact with fields. Let's now just have a quick peek at the mobile client. So what I'm going to do is share my screen or share my phone. And so now you should see a copy of my phone with Business Central open. One of the things that I wanted to kind of do as well is just to show that if I have a particular QR code and I want to launch a different company, well, actually I could create it as a URL or have it as a QR code that I want to scan on my phone or whatever. But what I'm going to do there is let's actually just open that up. So if I go camera, and then I look at my QR code, and then I touch the top, and then that's just talking about how to launch a QR code. That's the way to do it from those slides that I was talking about. But now I'm logging into my Canada. Well, if I want to switch again, I could simply do back to my US if I choose. Let's go to that one, and then away I go. I've launched now into my US company on my phone, or US database in this example. All right, So just kind of talking about that chevron thing, I just wanted to show you from my phone. So if I go to my list of my customers and I choose a customer, that's just at the top where I'm touching there, that little chevron. So I can see their picture, maybe look at their ongoing sales orders. I can go back and then I can reduce it. And now I could edit my customer if I wanted to. All right. So just some great improvements there and just the way that it works within my my mobile. And again, now landscape on my phone, and I have the ability to see some of that information there. So they've been making a lot of enhancements on the mobile component. And again, the tablet has some other changes that are of interest too. All right, I'll stop sharing that. All right, Power Platform improvements. So I won't go through this in detail. I do have a quick example to show you, again, with what you can do, but they have now a native in version 16 common data service integration ability. And so as an example, we have been able to take and extend now Business Central with Power Apps into a synchronized application. So what I'll do is, again, I'm just going to share my screen or share my phone. So now that I've launched the Power App on my phone, it's now prompting me for permission to use camera and location of my device. And I'm going to hit yes, so it's respecting my privacy or whatnot. But now I have rental units on my phone. And this now is syncing through CDS. So it goes from my Power App on my mobile to a CDS online database and then integrates or syncs with my Business Central data. So I can actually make changes now right within my app and hit go. And then with Power Apps and other applications, of course, I can go off and do things like barcode scanning and pictures and attachments and scanning of serial numbers and all sorts of stuff. So it's pretty exciting, and with the integration with the CDS out of the box with 2006, with the out of the box CDS integration for Business Central version 16, it's becoming easier to interact with those applications. All right, improvements for administrators and those who like detail. So I just wanted to kind of quickly touch on the overview of online updates. So updates are classified as major, minor, and hot fixes, and hot fixes can actually happen daily. But majors are twice a year. That's where we get version 15 to 16. We have minors, which is 16.0, 16.1, 16.2, for example. And then typically these are some features that are being rolled out from the major. So we talk about them in the major, and then they're rolled out minor. Minors happen typically monthly again. Don't forget to set up your notification receipts, and they're managed at the admin center. Notifications can provide for major, but they are sometimes for minor. I have not typically seen a lot of inclusion, but never for a hotfix. So when Microsoft makes a change and you suddenly have a slightly different behavior, we don't actually get an email notification on that. But there's a few tricks on some of the slides of where you can go and look for maybe what some of those changes were or how they've been done. And then ODT works with you to manage the update of your sandbox first, and then we delay the production update for kind of pending that. That gives you an opportunity to try seeing things out in your sandbox first to make sure that if you have had a modification made to your Business Central, that it works with that update. So we work together with doing that. Manual process to manage the update. And so, and then we are the mercy of Microsoft for timing. So oftentimes we get a lot of feedback saying, well, I thought it was going to be updated last night and it didn't. why, if we don't get the detail of what is wrong or what needs to be addressed or changed, unfortunately, we just have to reschedule and try again. Enable features ahead of time, that's new. And so what it is the ability to see a change that Microsoft is intending to roll out, and you can opt it in for all users or for a user and then try it out. So we're encouraging you to try these feature management and see how it works out for you in 16.2 going forward. Other client improvements include the ability to see current database locks. So if you had a particular user who's doing a posting, had an error, walked away from their PC, for example, that would create a lock. But now what you can do is actually use your sessions to cancel one of them in the admin center. So if that person had stepped out for lunch and you want to just close their session and free everybody else up, well, now we can do that again, which is nice. And then the ability to see table size, so you can see where your database is being used, company information, size, things like that. So the Business Central Admin Center, the specific updates for version 16 is the ability to manage apps and updates and manage or kill those sessions. So let me just quickly show you that. So if I go to the Admin Center, so I had it all kind of set here that on my sandbox, I'm in the Manage Apps from the environments, but you'll notice I actually have a pending update, so a hotfix for Microsoft that has not yet been applied and that's available to me. Well, now I can use the Manage Apps and it'll be expanded to include things like Open Door rentals. So during minor updates, if we posted a new version 5.1, it would not auto-update from Microsoft until the next major. Well, now you can review this list to see what apps there are that are available now and use the install and update. So I'm just going to go ahead and process that. Oh, it's probably because I've been sitting on the admin center for so long. But that's where I can install selective apps. So from the environments, this is where I can look at a particular environment, and I think I was in the sandbox, and I want to go manage apps. And then this is then where I can view what is available or not available to update. And let's give that a, okay, we're going to move on. But from then that's where I can install updates. But the other thing that you can do is if I go into Sandbox, I can manage sessions, and that's where I can actually cancel a selected session for a particular user in an environment. So I encourage you to check that out. Notification recipients. Don't forget to use your notification recipients to get in that list. So we add ODT-IT and support for our managed Business Central. And then we're working to watch those communications, update any extension development that needs to be updated for a breaking change from Microsoft. But you can always add yourself or a contact of your organization there to watch for those new versions coming out. So that was just kind of the updates on the admin tenant that I wanted to show. Right, so minor update reference, there's a QR code for you, but this is an ability to kind of go and see what are the minor or the hotfix details that are for a particular application. So I encourage you to check out this help. Now, just as kind of a side note on how fast everything keeps moving, but I had finished all my slides for the presentation this morning, and then I suddenly get another email saying that at about 8:30 that Microsoft has announced the availability of 16.2. So some of those features that I had talked about are available starting now. But what does this mean? Well, it means that any new environment that is created, so a brand new customer or a brand new database that's made, would start at 16.2. But for those of us that are in 16, 16.1 or other versions, the update to 16.2 will be made by Microsoft automatically, but in the coming week. However, they're on hold until about the 12th of June as they're applying server level updates right now. So just don't expect to be able to go in there today and hit update for 16.2. So you'll be able to watch that manage apps list for new versions and give them a try in your sandbox, and then do that on your prod. Reminder of Business Central learning references. So there's a QR code just to kind of take you to a support article we have listing out some links for online Microsoft Learning resources. So this is a combination of documents, articles, and some videos. Documentation, so the online documentation, videos, blogs, forums, and feedback, just again as a reminder. Shortcut keys. There's a lot of new shortcut keys for those who like the keyboards, and if you want to keep your users moving fast, we really encourage them, but check them out here. They've got post action now, and the F6 that I talked about, F2 is there, so feel free to print off yourself a cheat sheet. Again, I can't stress how important it is. Feedback and vote, make sure you're heard. Get onto Business Central Ideas, search for what you are wishing was there, see if it's already there, and give it a vote. Or create your own suggestion. Very quickly, updates on our apps. We have new versions of ODT Rentals and ODT Service. So version 5 for both those available for version 16. And then there are release notes available, some of the new features. You can, again, check out the forum, get onto the release notes for those apps, and you can review them. One of the exciting things that has happened in the last few months is that we have now gotten the connector for rentals and service published. So what that means is that you can integrate your rentals and service for planned maintenance now. So we encourage you to check that out. And just to kind of remind you is that ROWs for the rest of the world. These are our North America versions, okay? So just depending on where you are in your supported regions and countries. Our other ODT add-ons, as of October last year, I had talked about the apps that are coming. Well, I'm excited to say that they are now available. So we have ODT Accounts Payable, EFT Intercompany, Field Ticket, and our I2X integration in partnership with next-gen software. So those are available and being planned out for those who utilize the I2X application or other features. They're available for your upgrade path. What are we working on? Well, we're excited to be working with ODT Payments 365. So we are working on having a integrated credit card in person or card present type transaction to start with supporting chip, PIN, tap, and Apple Pay. And that we're planning to have that released later this year. And then we're in progress with a new ODT intercompany update that'll extend our ODT intercompany functionality to include banks. So I'll be able to do a cash receipts journal and transfer cash from one bank in one company to another in another company. So we're excited to have that on the plate too. And then also being able to save that as a journal template. Well, I realize that we've been over by 7 minutes. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today on version 16 and the updates that are there. If you have any questions or would like to discuss that with us, please reach out to your account manager or email sales@opendoor.ca. Thank you very much.